Welcome to The Miracle You, guiding you on the journey towards finding passion and purpose and how to discover, create, and live a life by your design. Whether your success has been plentiful or your missed opportunities have been overwhelming, we can help you become a more empowered, masterful person and show you how to share your gift with the world. It's time to inspire change from within with the host of The Miracle You, Vince Kramer.
Hello, imagination. I'm Vince Kramer, your host, and welcome to The Miracle You, where you learn about the magic of living your life by finding the example in real life. Each and every one of us has the ability to bring something into the world that no one else brings in. We have this magical set of gifts and talents that are uniquely ours. But one of the things that I notice, especially as people's hearts open more and more, and they start realizing who they are, and they start realizing the essence that they shine out into the world, they have the fear of, what if somebody judges me? What if I'm not accepted? They really don't want to be visible. Today's guest talks about stepping out through visibility to really bring the true and real you to the world. Now, one thing that I want to share with you is that visibility can look many different ways. It has to be your way that you're visible. You have to feel some tension in it, but in the comfortable atmosphere that you first share who you are. You first allow people to see you and what you bring to the world. In finding comfort in that, now you can really step into the bigness of you. And that bigness of you can be at any level. Once again, remember that you are an individual. You are special. Yes, we are all the same in this universe, in the energy that we represent in the universe. But in being special, there is your way to be visible in the world. So take a little bit of time after you listen to today's episode and think about, how do you feel pulled to being visible in this world? I'm with Jenny Kovacs today, and Jenny shows outstanding people in great businesses how to be visible, make a difference, and stand out to those who are looking to raise their profile. She's the creator of the Visibility Vibe System, a tried and tested method that helps businesses, organizations, and business owners to promote their strengths through the way they stand out to the people around them, gaining them profile that they desire. Whether it's a meeting, a promotion, or a presentation that's live or online, her methods will have you seen, heard, and remembered in the best way. Most importantly, Jenny loves to share little-known techniques with those aspiring to accomplish more in their professional development to help them to raise their profile. She does this interactively while taking the stage live and online to present to audiences big and small. Jenny Kovacs, are you ready to share the miracle of you with the imagination?
I absolutely am. I'm so looking forward to it. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for being here. And I love your accent. So this is going to be so much fun for me to share. I get a few accents here and there, and I don't get out to the whole world as much as I would like to. So hopefully some more people will hear your interview and say, we want to be part of the Miracle You also.
Excellent.
You know, Jenny, I ask everybody to keep these bios really, really short so we can get an understanding of who you are, but it kind of leaves us a little bit short of really knowing more about you and what you do. Could you go a little bit deeper into who you are and what you do?
The short version is I'm nicknamed the Queen of Being Seen. And this is because I help people to really raise their visibility. Sometimes they're scared of being visible. Sometimes they just want more visibility. But I help them in a specific number of ways. I help them to do this on video. I help them to do this while speaking. And I help them to do this when they are the person that needs to demonstrate or articulate their value. So the people that I tend to work with most are either business owners, normally one-man band business owners, or I also work in the corporate space with CEOs and people who are they're quite ambitious, and they're looking to really put their work out there in the world in a way that's memorable or noticeable, and be promoted and paid well for it, let's face it. So that's kind of the shortened version of what I do. Does that help?
It does. It certainly does. Tell us a little bit about what moved you. I've done a lot of research before we started today, so I know where your background is and where you've come from. Could you tell us a little bit about what happened in your life to move you from the world that you were living in before to what you're bringing to the world now as a heart-based entrepreneur?
So the conventional reason that I actually created the Visibility Vibe system was because I was working in financial services in corporate England, working for a huge international bank. And I was part of their mortgages. And I found mortgages really great, really quite sexy, for want of a better expression. So I was actually working in the industry through the crash that happened in 2008 and before. But here's what happened. I did what most people do at some point in their mind. I sat at my desk one day and said, you know what? I want really good career progression. I want to be promoted. I want to raise through the ranks, if you like, and, get the recognition for the work that I do. It was one of those decisions that I made. And I tried, and I use that word purposefully, I tried really hard to make it happen. I noticed in my behaviours and who I spoke to and how I showed up at work. And I went for a job interview within a company that I was working with, and I didn't get the interview. When I asked for feedback, they just said, there's nothing to feed back. You were great. You came across great. You were very well respected. You were good at what you do. Which is all well and good, but when you yourself are really trying to be promoted and have that career progression, that's really horrible feedback because you can't do anything with it. So I made a decision to move from that company to another company. And within 2 years of being within the new business, I was promoted 3 times and I quadrupled my salary. I didn't think there was anything strange about this until years later when I became a business owner myself in 2010. And it was almost like I would just casually mention that when my clients said, oh, so what did you used to do before this? And I would mention that I worked in financial services, and have been through various different industries. And when I got to that bit, quadrupling my income and, being promoted so quickly, people found it quite, there's an English expression, gobsmacking, which means, like show-stopping. They couldn't believe it. And everyone wanted to know how. Well, I'm not sure about you, Vince, or any of you listening. When you're good at something or you've done something really well and somebody says, but how did you do that? It's like the most impossible question to answer. Yeah. How are you so good at painting, or how are you good at, creating great recipes? You can't answer it. And the answer is usually, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know. So I actually worked with a coach. Now, here's the thing to remember. This question had been asked of me 2 years after I started my business. And at the time, my business was around helping people with their presentations, because my background in financial services had seen some of the most articulate people being put on presentation courses, the kind where they get the camera pointing at you, they count your they say that you wave your head about too much or wave your arms. And I saw the most articulate people crumble. And I remember just thinking, I want to help people to be able to present themselves naturally without that happening. So in my head, that's what I thought I was quote unquote doing. And when I sat with this coach and went through some of the things that people had come to me for with their presentations and the results they were getting and how it was literally transforming their lives, I'm going to be honest, I just said, no, it's not me that's doing that. I'm not doing that. They're doing it, and it must be something else that's happening. So we sat down and we looked at what was going on. And in fact, it wasn't anything to do with speaking and presentations. It was all about visibility. Well, back in 2012, certainly here in the UK, no one was speaking about being visible. So at that point, I owned that. I owned that I was really able to help people to become more visible, to be seen, truly seen for who they are and the value they add, and truly heard in a voice that was theirs, not them trying to be me or them trying to be like Tony Robbins, but themselves, and to be happy and confident with that. So that's how this whole journey started. And, 2 years after I started my business. So I'd love to say I had it all figured out from day one, had a strap line and everything else. But the truth was that I kind of crawled my way through it. And for the first, easily for the first 12 months, and even when you and I, know this particular mentor that we have in common, and I actually went into her year-long program, and that's when I had to unpick, and it felt painful. I had to unpick, what was I doing? Why did it work? What was I asking? Could I really do this for lots of people, or do I really have to have the person in front of me and be bespoke? It felt like a painful process, but I'm so glad I did it, because that's how I discovered that I was indeed the queen of being seen. Not even me being seen, but clients, companies, organisations, well-known people. I was able to infuse some of the vibe system to them to help them to be seen. That's how it started.
So there's a couple things that you shared here that I would love to address. First of all, we talk about wake-up calls on the Miracle You, and really honestly, the wake-up call, or a wake-up call for you, was just to realize that you were transforming people's lives inside of the work that you were doing that really had nothing to do with the work. It was you bringing your gifts and talents in a way that they were really able to open up to who they are. Can you explain to us a little bit about how you developed some of that knowing as you were coming up through the financial world, and where you found the importance of visibility, and more importantly, how to be visible?
So there are a few questions in there. And what I do want to say is, they say that hindsight is a wonderful thing. Standing where I stand today and every day, I look back, I think it was Steve Jobs that talked about connecting the dots. And I actually feel like my whole life was connecting the dots, because up until that moment that I first heard back from a client who I'd helped with a presentation, I'm kind of doing air quotes here, I helped with a presentation, and then they went on to do like some really fantastic, fabulous things in their own life. I just thought I was doing something. But there's an important part of this story that I haven't told you, and I'm going to share with your audience, if that's okay, because I think this is important.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing to say is, let me talk about the connecting the dots. When you sit down and work with somebody, it could be intuitively, it could be on a more linear kind of coaching mental level, you are asked not only to pick out pieces of your life that really matter, that you might have glossed over, but you're asked to go deep within yourself, to pull from inside of you things that matter, which I think is why I describe it as a kind of pleasurable but also painful process. So when I went through that process, I realised that I had this ability to stand out from when I was a kid. But when you talk about life purpose and putting these things out, you don't really think about, oh, well, when I was 4, I remember this lady came to my mum's house and she was going through a hard time. As a 4-year-old, I didn't understand it, and just putting my hand on her leg and she seemed to change and get a bit more happier, and then my job was done. Or my favourite example, all true, reading Enid Blyton. As a child, I loved Enid Blyton books, The Wishing Chair, The Faraway Tree. If you've never read those, even if you're an adult, go and buy one of those books, because she talks about a certain type of magic that was supposed to be contained for children. And I had some sort of like resonance, I think, as a child. I was brought up in a quite strong Christian family. I had this resonance as a child with the magic that happened in the Enid Blyton books. But I somehow knew, if as a child I said, oh my gosh, I think that magic happens out in the world, that, well, I probably would have been prayed over at church, and I've got nothing against the church system. And, my mum probably would have had some concerns about my health. So I knew that this magic existed in the world. It's like I could feel it, and I didn't know what to do with it. So those were the dots that I started to join, and still every day join as I looked back. What was that magic about? And it's almost like when I have the privilege to work with somebody one-to-one privately, they'll say, oh, I'm not really clear on what I do, or I know what I do and I want to do this. It's almost like that is at play, because I hear what they say, but I really see who they are, even when they can't see it for themselves. So those were some of the dots that I connected backwards. But the piece that I do want to share was, I loved working in financial services. I did so well, so quickly. And then in 2008, the recession happened. And I lost my job as a very senior manager. And at that point, I wanted to start a business, but I was scared. I hadn't started a business before, didn't really know about taxes and structures. And I chose, like many people do, kind of to ignore that call and just to look for another job. I took a 60% pay cut for the next role. And I worked there for 2 years until I made a decision, you know what, I'm going to give this a go. What's the worst that can happen? So this is quite ironic. The day that I started my business, I literally handed in my notice at this particular company. I had to work 3 months of my notice period. I literally finished work for that company on the Friday, and on the Monday in my head said, this is when I'm going to start a business. But at the same time, I and my then husband, I'd also said, this is where we're going to start a family. And I had known for some years that I had some challenges, medical challenges with starting a family. So the very day I decided to start my business, I also decided to start a family with assisted conception, otherwise known as IVF. I'd done my NLP training, I was like, positive mental attitude. This is going to work. I sat in the waiting room jotting down notes. If I had to teach this to somebody else, what would I teach them in terms of mindset and how to be and all of that kind of stuff? And of course, I fell pregnant, and I fell pregnant first time. And of course, as a kind of a bit of an A-type overachieving person, as I was then, I fell pregnant with twins. And again, the fear kicked in, if all of this medicine and everything else has started this process and is keeping this process, what happens when the medication stops? Fear is a very insightful thing. So I carried on. We went through the pregnancy until halfway through the twin pregnancy. And I always feel like I should have a disclaimer. If you are pregnant and are worried about remaining pregnant, I feel like saying, don't listen to this, and it doesn't have to be your story. But unfortunately, halfway through the twin pregnancy, I actually lost the twins. And it wasn't in a kind of the normal way. So, many families out there, unfortunately, lose their children through miscarriage. I actually went into labour, and I didn't know I was in labour. You don't expect to be in labour halfway through a twin pregnancy. So I had these stomach pains, rushed to hospital. And while my then husband, we have now split, but as he went to go and get help, because I kept talking about these waves of pain, didn't know I was in labour. As he went, I remember this really kind of strange sensation. I was on a ward, it was nighttime, I was in agony, and I remember thinking, I can't make any noise, I don't want to wake these ill people up. I actually delivered the first twin. A bit of a shock to the system. I was like, whoa, that's what's going on. That's not supposed to happen. So very quickly I was taken to the maternity unit, and, with twins, one comes along, the other one's on its way. They were too young to survive. Now, in that moment, it was a really weird, a weird feeling to describe. I almost feel like part of me felt like I'd lost a dream. But out of my mouth, I remember saying back then, and I don't even know where these words came from, this is likely to change our lives as we know it, but something good will come out of this. I mean, really, what a strange thing to say, given that I just sort of, delivered these 2 twins, too young to survive, and that was it. And I think I often refer back to that as a gift in ugly wrapping. And the reason I refer to the ugly, just to clarify, the circumstances, that life circumstance was an ugly circumstance, but it was also a gift. And I think when you experience something like that, it takes away your fear of anything, So there's something that links me helping others to be visible, even when they're scared, even when they think my story is too personal, I can't share it. It was almost like that sequence of events happened so that I could say to people, you know what? There's just a way for you to tell your story. There's a way for you to be visible. There's, amounts for you to share in an authentic and real way. And there are things that you don't actually have to share. There are ways you can tell that story. I can tell that story in a way that doesn't give that detail or gives more detail. It hit me when, 3 years later, I was working with a client and she was really going through a tough time. And she said to me, it gives me chills even to say this, she said to me, I've worked with coaches before, and she said it's almost like they take you to the riverbank and they leave you there to cross and they say, see you at the other side. And she said, for you, Jenny, I felt like you walked with me through the valley of the shadow of death. And I get goosebumps thinking about it now, because up until that point, I didn't realise that I did that, and I didn't know why. And it was because I'm not scared, I'm not scared of certain things that people tell me. So I understand the fear they're going through, but I also understand what can be done, what, who that person is to be visible, and almost like who you be, to be visible. Does that make any sense at all?
Oh, very, very much so. And I want to thank you for sharing that story. And I can relate to you very much. And my first wife and I had problems, and we never did have children. And I know the pain and what that can come from that, and even how it holds on for a while. It's very interesting because you went from talking about connecting the dots to this story, and this story was a big dot for you. And in being a dot for you, it sounds to me like it also helped you bring your feeling and you're relating to the magic to your work. Is that true?
I think it did, because the gift in all of that was like how I'd felt through the pregnancy, just like it's almost like the insights and the things that it brought. And you'll know this more than anyone else, Vince. Sometimes it takes a real cracking open, something like that, to really bring that to the fore. Had I not have had that experience, yes, there are other things that I could draw upon, but it's almost like it was a catalyst, and I think no coincidence that the day that I started my business was the very same day that I was going to try, go down this route to start a family as well. One's still going and one isn't. And I think in a world of magic pills, and where sometimes I think people expect every story has a quote unquote happy ending, happy endings can look very, very different. It doesn't have to be the fairy tale, because normally somebody telling that story would back it up with, oh, but 2 years later, here's little Johnny, here's a picture of Johnny and look how cute he is and everything else. I don't have that, but at the same time, I don't feel like I've missed out or lucked out. I just feel like I got a different experience. And within that experience, it definitely pulled together the joining of the dots, why I was good at certain things, and actually gave me the freedom to say, you know what, this is not my lane. So I'm going to pass you over to Vince, who knows all about this thing. Whereas, I would prefer to stick with this. So in a way, it gave me so much freedom to say yes and to say no, and to encourage other people to have the same and do the same for themselves and for their lives. So I can't look at that experience as anything other than a gift. And I really, truly mean that. And I'm also very sympathetic, hearing that you can resonate with this story as well, because it is a painful path, it's a raw path, I think is the word to use. And sometimes what goes on in our private lives definitely affects our professional life and vice versa. And in some places, it's not deemed safe to talk about both. Therefore, people will hide themselves, become invisible, and not stand out or not feel like they can share who they really are, which is actually the secret sauce to really being magnetic and memorable and making an influential impact, you know?
For sure. There's so many things that you've said that I want to talk about, and I'm not quite sure which direction. I'll tell you what. Let me ask you this,
Mm,
because you just shared that there's gifts, and we teach that in Imagine Miracles, that in every circumstance in our life there's been a gift,
mm,
and most of those gifts are to help us in some way or another develop a gift or talent, or to start opening our hearts.
mm,
So, as people that you work with, or people, just the average person out there right now, listening from the imagination, as they start experiencing things in their lives, that they start experiencing their heart opening,
mm,
and the connection with other people, like you said earlier when you were talking about your magic, that you knew and you could feel and you understood who somebody was. And I
mm,
think we all open to up to that slowly or surely, some more than others, through our lives. When that starts to happen, there's a fear of people seeing our vulnerability with an open heart.
yeah.
Can you give just a little bit of advice on how somebody who's listening right now and they feel that connection with other people, and they really start to understand that their heart's opening, how to step into the visibility? Just a few little helpful
Mm.
hints.
I think we will naturally feel that opening up, you know, the heart opening up, and we'll feel naturally quite vulnerable. Let that be your cue when that happens and you feel like, no, I can't say that, it's not appropriate, just to pause and breathe. Pause and breathe into that, and ask yourself, you know, and do this before the event happens by all means, but ask yourself, what's the truth about this? Like, what's the truth about what's happening here? And I've said this in terms of communication and in terms of sharing anything. If you come from a place of truth, come from a place of love, there is nothing that you can say wrong or do wrong when it comes to being visible. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean truth in its purest sense, and also telling the truth, because there are points where to protect ourselves. Like that story, I could tell an untruth about that story, like, oh, I never wanted kids anyway. That's not true. And we just say that to protect ourselves. So if you have a story, and so many people tell me, I've got this story, there's no way I can share it, you know, people wouldn't think of me the same or whatever, just take some time. If you're a person that journals, take some time just to notice what's coming up. When you feel that resistance in any moment, it's okay to pause, and it's okay in telling the truth. So I do a lot of Facebook Lives. It's okay to just stop and say, you know what, I'm not sure whether to share this with you or not. It feels a bit vulnerable to share, and then say, I'm going to share this anyway, or you know what, I'm going to do another Facebook Live on this, or I'm going to do another podcast on this, or I'm going to share another episode of this thing. Going into that very simplistic level of truth is really freeing. It's really liberating, gives you time to get your thoughts together, and gives you time to be able to speak to the truth of a situation. And often it means that you speak to the one smallest thing that makes the biggest difference. That's important, especially when you are heart-centered and you're sharing.
Oh, that's very powerful. Thank you very much. It's great advice. This is the favorite part of my show. Believe it or not, we're moving along so fast through this time. Um, I've got a list of people coming back, and you're one of them. At least
Oh, cool.
if you agree, you're coming back, because there's so much I want to talk to you about. There's so much that I align with you and what you're sharing. Could you tell us something that's coming up in your life or your business that not too many other people know, and that we could send the collective energy of the imagination to you to help manifest it in your life?
Oh, what a juicy question. I love that. So, off the bat, here's what's coming up for me. I have very recently collaborated with a huge global organization. I explained that I have my business owners and my corporate types of people, and this is more corporate. Now, I went through financial services, and the people that work within that industry often get a bad rap because of the recession and the crash and everything else like that. I feel like as I'm saying this to you, this is where vulnerability comes up. What if they hear this and think I'm a total freak? But I'm going to say it anyway. I feel like there's a really good opportunity for us, whether you identify as heart-centered, light worker, or anything else, to really infiltrate the world in a great way from the inside. Don't be afraid of the news. Don't be afraid of newspapers. Don't be afraid of politics. If you've got something to say, just immerse yourself in that environment and shine your light from the inside. It will make such a difference. And with this global partnership, I am now putting my visibility content into their platform. These are, some of their partners are some of the best known banks and financial institutions in the world. I feel like it's a really great opportunity to share raise your profile, go for your career, but also to share the lightness and the light, if you like, and the magic from that way. So I would love it to have that collective energy sent, because I really feel like, I'm crazy enough to think I can make a difference. Yeah, I absolutely can. And I'd love to be able to kind of share that from within that organization. So yeah, the collective consciousness, bring it on.
We're sending it your way, and it sounds like it's not quite ready to be announced exactly who you're going into a partnership with. So we will hold that and wait and watch to see what comes up. But from where you're coming from and the heart that you're sharing with the world, there's no doubt when we put this collective energy together, it's going to be so powerful and really make a transformation in the world. And I love that you shared that it's coming from the inside. Because when each and every one of us find ourselves, and each and every one of us realizes that this is the gift in the process that we're bringing to the world, you can't help but change things when you start shining the light out. The shadows go away, the darkness goes away, or at least we accept and we become one with the darkness, where it's no longer something that we fear, something that's scary. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for expanding yourself and your workout into a way that it's going to make a difference in so many more people.
No,
I've got to ask, you've already shared a little bit of guidance with us, but is there a parting piece of guidance that you could share to just help the imagination and anybody else that hears this, or even the vibration that you're sending out with your words, that will make a difference in people's lives?
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing about being visible. As I say, for some people, it's the kind of fear of being visible. For others, it's just about expanding and reaching out and being more visible. The thing that I want anyone listening to this to know is, yes, I have a system, and there are kind of 5 key steps to go through that system. I could tell you that in a nutshell. Deciding to be visible and how you're going to be visible, creating the kind of impact or leaving the kind of impression that you want to leave, being able to share your story and stories in a way that makes your work memorable and people see the value. Showing up authentically as you is so important. Everyone else is taken. And also being able to not only speak about the work that you do, but also to be able to sell that. It might be classically selling that as a business, or it might be selling an idea or a concept or a thought or a movement. But being able to sell those ideas is really, really important. So those are like the 5 kind of quick pieces. And they come from this directly from the system. But here's what I really want you and everybody else listening to know. So if you're listening to this, your message matters. Your words matter. Your voice matters. It matters whether you're a parent of small children, older children. What you say is important. You really matter. And being visible is the vehicle to get those words and your message and your value out into the world, whether it's within your family, whether it's within yourself, whether it's within your school, your organization, your movement, your audience. Your message really matters. And I want people to know that what they say really matters. You just got to say it.
Sharing your message opens the door to other people's hearts so they can share theirs. So even if you think you don't have a big message and it's not something that's going to be earth-shattering or world-changing, your message might not be the one that starts or implements the huge change, but your message might open the hearts of others who will make that big change. And they are just waiting for you to share your story so they can feel comfortable in sharing theirs. And I want to say that, Jenny, you sharing yours today, I'm sure has opened the door for so many to share their story. I know people want to know more about you, know more about what you do. How can people get in touch with you?
So the easiest way to get in contact with me is I have a Facebook page, of course. It's The Queen of Being Seen, Jenny Kovacs. So if you search on that, if you Google me, you'll find me. Or go to my website. I have two, jennykovacs.com, which is Jenny, Jenny, Kovacs.com, or thequeenofbeingseen.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to our part 2, because I think there's more magic to unearth to your listeners. There
is no doubt in my mind. I've got about 4 pages here, believe it or not, that I was taking notes on. So there's no doubt that we'll be back. All that information that Jenny just shared is going to be on the show page. So just go to themiracleyou.com. Look for Jenny's interview, and all that information will be listed out there for you so you can get in contact with her. Once again, Jenny, thank you for sharing your story and who you are. And I can't wait for you to be back. I think it's going to be sooner than later, maybe just a couple weeks apart between episodes, if I can talk you into it after we finish this interview.
Absolutely.
Everyone, on behalf of Mary, my wife, and my business partner, and the entire imagination, we want to wish everyone a miracle day.
You've completed this episode of The Miracle You, but we have plenty more to help you discover your own personal passion and purpose. Head over to themiracleyou.com for free resources to assist you on your journey, as well as register for our free webinar, Discover Your Miracle Life, 3 Mind Awakening Steps Toward Your Unique Purpose, or apply for a one-on-one Your Life, Your Way breakthrough session and discover your next best step on your journey. All available exclusively on our website. That's themiracleyou.com. We look forward to sharing more experiences of passion, purpose, and life by design next time, right here on The Miracle You.